Hi friends, Mindy here. I have a process video today of how I'm setting up my March kit, my little mini book that I create for the Wow kits from Prepared From Above. These are the printables that I'll be using for this month, the Wow kits, and then also I have one printable from last month that I'll be using. Just showing, I went off of the calendar just a little bit because I went off of the Monday start. Anyway, so I have 1 week of technically of the February kit and then all of the March kit that's going to go into this journal. So here are the papers that I'm using. These are all Felicity Jane papers from different kits. There's Tori and Bailey and a couple others I can't remember. You can kind of see on the strips down there at the bottom. And then what I do is I just pull out the ephemera packs for those kits as well. And that way I'll have all of that to go along with the printables, just to make everything kind of go together. And so what I'm doing is I'm cutting these papers down to 7.5 by 5.5 will be the finished size of my book. But I'm cutting them a little bit longer than 7.5, like 7 3/4, just so that at the end, after everything is folded, I can trim it all down and make that the edge flush. And I'll show you how that looks at the end. Just comparing that to February, making sure I have the size right. And so I'm just cutting this down. This paper I'm actually going to use 2 pieces of because I wanted that one piece for the cover. And then I'm setting all the scraps off to the side because you can use those for card fronts or all kinds of different things. The Felicity Jane paper is really great weight for something like this with a little mini book or whatever. Obviously it's good for scrapbooking and everything, but I've been really enjoying using it to create these little mini books. And what you'll see is I'm cutting off of like the top section of the paper most of the time so that I leave the branding strip on the bottom so I know which kit everything came from when I go back to use those other pieces. With the exception of like this paper here, it has that white scallop edge at the bottom and I want that on my page. So I'm going to make sure to cut that end so that I have that decorative end on my paper. And the same thing with this paper that has all the different colors. I'm going to cut off the branding strip part and then I will measure the 5.5 inches tall based on the bottom, from the bottom up, so that I can use that scallop because I just think that's really pretty. And it will just add another element of design into the finished pages. So here I'm just showing all of the pages, what they look like when they've been cut. And now I'm going to score them. And I have a scoring board, but if you don't have a scoring board, you can kind of work around that. If you use your paper trimmer and a bone folder, you can just kind of measure along where you need it to be. That's what I'm showing you here. And then just use a bone folder and go down the ridge where your cutter would normally slide. But I find it easy to use my scoreboard, and since I have it, that's what I'm using. But if you don't have one, that's one way that you can do that. And I'm scoring them because getting that really nice folded edge, that nice crease, will really help the book when I'm binding it. It just helps it stay together a little bit better. So I'm going through and I'm just going to score all of those in the middle and then fold them. And now I'm going to try to decide what order I want all of these papers in. Again, I have 2 of that one style just because I knew that I wanted to use that for the cover. So I start with one that is going to be the cover, and then I kind of work my way inside. And I'm trying to alternate between the pages that are more green or more pink, or than like the multicolored ones, kind of just to give it a variety. But one of the other things I take into consideration are kind of the printables and the order that they're going to be in. So I knew that I was bringing in this last page from February, so I needed those to kind of coordinate as best as I could. Even though the colors are very similar to March, they are off a little bit. So I'm just trying to make it all look as one cohesive thing. And this is just because I got my numbers, my weeks out of order. So if you did all of these for February, you wouldn't have that problem. But it will fix itself this month because I'm doing all of March. But anyway, so now I'm just putting all of these pages in the order that I am going to want them And it takes me a little, bit. I go through and then I'll go through it again before I sew it, just to make sure that I have it. And from page to page, there's a good mix of color to pattern, because, the Felicity Jane papers have that really bold black and white. So I wanted a color next to a black and white, just to kind of give it that variety. So here what I'm using is the We Are Memory Keepers bookbinding tool. You don't necessarily need this, I just have it, and it does help because you can really get your awl down into those holes. So you just kind of set up, I have my book clipped together so the pages don't slip, and then you it has like a valley in there, and you put the crease down in there, and then you tighten it down with these little screws and it will hold it. And then I'm just going to go through and kind of find the middle, and I'm going to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. I've done this before on my channel. So you just punch 3 holes. So I'm kind of trying to find as close to the middle as you can get. You could be more particular about it, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, that's not really necessary. And then you kind of go from the middle, from the middle hole up to the top, and find relatively close to the center of that. At least that's how I do it. And then do the same thing on the bottom. So you end up with 3 holes relatively evenly spaced apart. And I'm just kind of showing you. I got one just a little bit off, but it won't matter with the final book. And then somehow I lost some footage of the actual sewing process. Here you can see you get, I'm using jute, and you kind of measure it 3 times the length of your book is about how much material you're going to need to thread it. It's just a good amount to work with. You do end up with a little bit extra, but so I'm just going to thread my bookbinding needle and then use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Somehow I lost that footage, but it's on my channel elsewhere. And then again, I lost where I trimmed it down, but I just used a straight edge, a metal ruler, and my x-acto knife, and just trimmed it all even down the right side, because when you stack the papers inside each other, the middle papers kind of stick out. So I just you could leave it that way totally, but I just like having a flush edge. So I just go through there and trim it out with an x-acto knife. And now I'm going to use corner chomper. This is it's from Bind It All. That I've had it for years, but it can punch through really thick things. So I use it for this because I can do a lot of paper all at once. I'm just rounding the corners, and then this is what it looks like when it's all sewn and trimmed with the corners rounded. And I'm doing all of these months the same size. So far this will be my 3rd book. And then I'm using these Felicity Jane Alpha stickers. These are puffy stickers. I can't remember which collection that came from. I'll try to list it below, but and I'm just gonna do the title of March 2021 on the outside of this, and I'm just using a ruler to kind of get that first letter on there straight. And then I probably could have used it for the whole thing, but I'm just not that particular. So and now I'm just doing 2021 underneath. And I love the Felicity Jane Alpha stickers. Okay, so here is what my little book looks like. Here's a quick flip through of all of the pages now that it's all bound together and everything with the patterns and the colors. I love how this one came together. Now I'm going to work through the first prompt. This week was about comfort, and so what I'm going to do, the way that I do all of these is I start with the list of scriptures and one of the flashcard pieces, and I put that on the first page so that I know kind of an intro page for the week of scripture. So I'm just trimming out that little tag that has all of the scriptures for the week on it, and I'm just going through and trying to find things that are going to coordinate with this week and with the papers that are on there. The first page is a black and white, so anything I put on there, that part's kind of easy. And then I have this these little flashcards that come in the kit, and that say comfort, so I'm just trimming that out, and then I'll go on here as well. And then it just felt like it needed something, so I'm trying to figure out kind of just a little simple embellishment. And I came up with one of these Felicity Jane die cuts that I'm just gonna glue kind of tucked behind and over the flashcard. And then also that little heart is a Felicity Jane die cut piece, and I'm just gonna put that over the top. And then one thing that I always do before I decide what I'm going to use for the page is I always look at the scripture. If it's a long scripture, I need more room, and so that kind of dictates some of my choices. In this instance, it's a pretty long scripture, so I know that I'm going to need a good amount of space, and I want to write it kind of in that top section, and really use that scalloped paper, as the decorative element. So I cut out one of the tag shapes from the kit, and just kind of feeling like everything is a little too monochromatic, so I'm using a scrap of this Felicity Jane paper to back up that tag, just to kind of set it apart from the background, just to add a little pop of, just some contrast behind there. And then this is what I will write the scripture reference on. So I'm just gonna glue that tag, and that is part of the kit. That's the ephemera that comes with the printables. And then I'm just backing that up with the Felicity Jane paper. And then now I'm gonna write out this scripture in Matthew. I'll cut that out. You don't have to watch me do all of that. And then I'll write the reference down here in the tag, or label, I guess, technically. And then I'm going to add another floral, and this is just going to kind of coordinate with the page on the opposite side. It's that same, and those just, again, from the Felicity Jane ephemera pieces. So it's not a super decorative page, but the scripture was a little bit longer, and I really wanted to keep the scallops on the paper, so I didn't want to add too much to it. And then here I got some glue where it shouldn't have been, so I'm just using a gum eraser to get that up. Now gluing that down with my ATG gun, and that's it. So here are some close-ups of the work that I did today. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.